We continue now at the top of Daf 65b Daf in Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 65b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought the position of the Baitusim. The Baitusim held that Mimocharas HaShabbos, when it says that the Omer is brought on the day after Shabbos, it literally means on the day after Shabbos, meaning to say the count starts on a Sunday, and that would mean Shavuos falls out on a Sunday. And on the previous summit, one of the Baitusim said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, it makes sense to say that this is the case, that Shavuos falls out on Sunday, because Moshe Rabbeinu was an Ohev Yisrael, he loved Klal Yisrael, and therefore Shavuos, which is a one-day holiday, should fall out on a Sunday. That way it's Shabbos, Sunday, you have a two-day holiday to celebrate. And so now the Gemara is in the middle of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's response. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai responds that it was just an 11-day journey when they left Mitzrayim. And v'im Moshe Rabbeinu Ohev Yisrael Hayah, if Moshe Rabbeinu really was an Ohev Yisrael, if he really loved Klal Yisrael, Lama Ichron b'midbar arboim shana. So why did he delay them in the Midbar for 40 years? So Amar Lo, so the Baitusi said to him, he said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Rebbe, Bekacha Topotrani, you think that's the argument you're going to use against me? Amar Lo, he said to him, Shota fool, Velote Torah Shleimo Shalanu, our complete Torah should not be Kesicha B'Teila Shalachem, like your worthless conversation. The answer to the question actually is as follows, Kosav Echad Omer Tisperu Chamishim Yom, there's one pasuk which it's written, it says, you should count 50 days, V'chosav Echad Omer, and then there's another pasuk where it says, Sheva Shabbosos Tamimos Tiyena, you have to count 7 complete weeks. And so Haketzad, how do we reconcile these two psukim? Kan be Yom Tov Shecholios B'Shabbos. In one case, we're talking about when Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, and Kan be Yom Tov Shecholios B'Emsa Shabbos. In the other case, it's when Yom Tov falls out in the middle of the week. And Rashi explains, Shimhaya Moshe Molech Es Yisrael Derech Har Seir, had Moshe taken Klal Yisrael by way of Har Seir, Hayu Boin Ba'achad Asar Yom L'Kadesh Yismuchel Eretz Yisrael, it would have taken 11 days to get to Kadesh, which is near Eretz Yisrael. So if he was an Ohev Yisrael, why did he delay them 40 years? Really, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was just saying this to push him away. Mishum Dua Yomer Divrei Hevel, because he was saying arguments that were nothing. Lotei Torah Shalemo Lidchos Adam Bekono V'Kash Kesicha B'Teila Shalachem, meaning Delanu Yesh Raya. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying, we have real evidence, we have real proof. V'Lachem Ein Raya, but you don't have any proof. And then again, he quoted the psukim, Chamishim Yom, one pasuk says 50 days. Rashi explains, Mashma Yomim V'lo Shavuos. That sounds like you count days, not weeks. V'chasav Echad Omer Shavuos. The other pasuk, it says, weeks, Shavuos lo kari ala osan hamaschilos be'echad b'Shabbos. And the understanding over here is that counting weeks has to start on a Sunday, u'mesayimos b'Shabbos, and end on Sunday. In other words, you're counting full weeks. And so how does it work exactly? 50 days, or is it 7 weeks? And so he answered, Haketzad ha b'yom tov rishon shel Pesach shechol b'Shabbos. If the first day of Pesach falls out on Shabbos, to be mochra so achar Shabbos, so then the day after, which is Sunday, do yom havas omer, that's the day of bringing the omer, umaschil and limnos, and we begin to count mesukim sheva shabbosos to mimos tiyena. So then you're going to count 7 complete weeks. That is the scenario of 7 weeks. But b'yom tov shel Pesach shechol lios be'emsa Shabbos, if Pesach falls out in the middle of the week, the maschil and limnos l'macharosu, you're going to start counting the very next day in the middle of the week. Then misokim kraba chamishim yom. Then we can fulfill the pasuk of 50 days. Velo shavuos shleimus. It's not going to be full weeks. Elamaschilin limnos be'emsa Shabbos. That's when we start counting in the middle of Shabbos, and that's the evidence to our position. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Eino tzarech, this proof that we just brought above is not necessary. We have another proof. Harehu Omer, it says in the pasuk, Tispar loch, you should count. The full pasuk is Shiva Shavuos Tispar loch mehachel chermesh bakama tachel lispar Shiva Shavuos. Again, that's the counting of the Omer, and we understand that to mean that it is a sfira teluya bebezdin. It's a counting that is dependent upon bezdin, and what that's referencing is, as we'll see in a moment, bezdin decides when Yom Tov is, because they're mekadesh the chodesh, they sanctify the new month. But Shabbos is not something that's decided by bezdin, and so therefore you see mimachras haShabbos doesn't mean the day after Shabbos; it means the day after Yom Tov. Shehem yodim Kadesh, they know how to sanctify the new moon, which essentially determines when is Yontiv. Mimachras HaShabbos, Machras Yontiv. Machras HaShabbos means the day after Yontiv. Yotza Shabbos Bereshis, and that excludes the Shabbos Bereshis, that excludes Shabbos, Shesvirasa B'chol Adam, because that's something that's counted by everyone. That's not something that's dependent in any way upon Bezdin. Rashi explains, Tispar Lach Mashma L'chote Misura HaSvira. The point over here is that it's something that's given over to you to determine from when to count. Svira Teluya Bebezin, it's a counting that's dependent upon the court. Shebezin Koven Hamoados, the point is that Bezin establishes when Yontiv is, B'tzarech Lishol, Emosai Chol Yomtiv Rishon Shel Pesach, you have to ask, when is the first day of Pesach, Shemaschil Limnos HaSvira Mimachras, because the counting of the Svira begins the next day. Yotzta Shabbos Bereshis, that excludes regular Shabbos, Shabbos Mamish, that refers to Shabbos, Shesvirasa Teluya B'chol Adam, counting there is dependent on anyone, not the court. Shein Tzarech La'adam Lishol Lebezdin Emosai Chol Yom Rishon, nobody needs to ask the court when Sunday is. Elamamtin at Shabbos, Shebesocha Pesach Maschil, again, you just wait for Shabbos that comes out in Pesach, and then it would be the very next day, and so therefore clearly we are not talking about Shabbos, we are talking about Yontif. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Yoshua says another proof, Amra Torah Mone Yomim V'Kadesh Chodesh, the Torah says to count days and sanctify the month, and Mone Yomim V'Kadesh Atzeres, and it says you count days, and you sanctify Atzeres, you sanctify Shavuos. Ma Chodesh Samach L'Biyaso Nikar, just like by the month, Samach L'Biyaso Nikar, Rashi is going to explain exactly what that means, but it means to say that it's recognizable, it's a recognizable time. Af Atzeres Samach L'Biyaso Nikar, so to Shavuos, it's a recognizable time. V'im Tomer Atzeres Liolam Achar HaShabbos. Now, if you're going to say that Atzeres is always going to be Achar HaShabbos, it's always going to be on Sunday, Heich Tehei Nikeres Mishelafana, how is it going to be recognizable from in front of it, from before it? Rashi explains, Mona Yomim V'Kadesh Chodesh, Ad Chodesh Yomim Mona Tisha V'Yesrim Yom, V'Kadesh Chodesh B'Yom Shloshim, you're going to count a month of days when you count the 29 days of the month, and then you sanctify the month on the 30th day. Machodesh samach lebias cheshbono nikr me'emasai taschil limnos dahainu miyom chavtes mishas molar halavana. The point over here is the calculation when it comes to the new month is clear because you're going to begin the count from the time of the molar halavana. When you see that new moon, that's when you begin the count. So afat seres, the same is true when it comes to Shavuos. Samach lebiaso minyan hachamishim nikr lahem yom kavua sheyaschil limnos bo. There has to be a set day that we begin the count. Now that would make sense if it's the day after the first day of Yontif. If we're going to wait for the Shabbos in the middle of Pesach and start the count on that Sunday, so there's not a clear day of starting. Sometimes you'll be starting on the 17th of the month, sometimes the 18th of the month. So the point over here is you want to have a clear starting point for when you're counting, and if Atzeres is always going to be on Sunday, so the count always starts on a Sunday, there's not a clear date to start that count. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Yishmael says, a different proof, Amra Torah have Omer b'Pesach, the Torah says to bring the Omer on Pesach, Ushtei Alechem b'Atzeres, and the Shtei Alechem, the two loaves on Atzeres, on Shavuos. And so we learn as follows, Malahalon regel utchilas regel, just like on Atzeres, by the Shtei Alechem, it's the beginning of the holiday. It's the holiday in the beginning of the holiday. So Afkan, so too over here by the Omer, regel utchilas regel, it's the holiday in the beginning of the holiday. And again, if you're going to go by Shabbos, it could already come out that you're going to bring the Omer towards the end of Pesach, and that would not be similar to Atzeres. Rashi explains, Malahalan b'shtei halechem ba'atzeres regelhu utchilas regel, just like the shtei halechem on Shavuos is a holiday, it's the beginning of the holiday. Af yom havoas omer, so too on the day of the bringing of the Omer, regel utchilas regel, it's got to be at the beginning of the holiday. V'im namtin ad la'achar Shabbos. Now, if you're going to wait until after Shabbos of Pesach, pa'amim shleisabah b'sofa regel, then sometimes it might be at the end of the holiday. Kegon shechol Pesach b'sheni b'Shabbos. For example, let's say Pesach starts on a Monday, so it's not going to be Shabbos until towards the end of Pesach. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says a different proof. Nemar Shabbos lamala, it says Shabbos above, and Nemar Shabbos lamatan, it says Shabbos below. Malahalan regel utchilas regel samachla, just like over there, the holiday and the beginning of the holiday is nearby. That's a reference to Shavuos. The point is that Shavuos is immediately after that Macharas HaShabbos HaShvius. It's immediately after the end of that 7th week. So Afkan regel utchilas regel samachla, so too by the Omer, the holiday and the beginning of the holiday is near it, meaning to say the beginning of the Omer, the bringing of the Omer is immediately after the beginning of the holiday of Pesach. Mimachras HaShabbos must mean Mimachras Yom Tov, the day after the first day of Yom Tov of Pesach. And Rashi explains Shabbos Lamata, it says Shabbos Lamata, that refers to Ad Mimachras HaShabbos HaShvius. Again, the Pasuk says you're going to count the 7 weeks, and the end of that seven weeks, it says Mimachras HaShabbos HaShvius. The day after the end of that 7 weeks, Vikrafta Mincha Chadasha, that's when you bring the new Mincha, the Hainu Atzeres, that's a reference reference to Shavuos. After the counting of the 7 weeks is Shavuos. V'nemar Shabbos Lamal, it also says Shabbos above. Usvartem lochem mimochras HaShabbos. You're going to count mimochras HaShabbos. And so we compare the two. Malahalan b'Shabbos shalamato amra b'shtei alechem. Just like the Shabbos by the shtei alechem by Shavuos, regel utchilas regel samach la'os HaShabbos. It means to say that after that 7th week is finished being counted, so immediately you have the holiday. Dahainu atzeres. You now have Shavuos. Hamascheles l'mochras shel Shabbos shvius la'achar she'avra Shavua da'os HaShabbos. Hainu Shavua. That Shabbos refers to the 7th week, and Shavuos is immediately after. So av shalamalu, so too above when it says Shabbos. So amura ba'omer, by the Omer, regel utchilas regel havasamachla. It doesn't simply mean that mimochras HaShabbos, meaning a Sunday. It's got to be that the holiday in the beginning of the holiday is right there. That's the day before. Dahainu yom rishon shel Pesach. That refers to the first day of Pesach. She'ez samach la'omer, which has to be right next to the Omer mimochras HaShabbos, mochras Yom Tov kamar. When it says mimochras HaShabbos, it means mochras Yom Tov, the day after Yom Tov. The Yom Tov kari Shabbos. Yom Tov is called Shabbos. Tichsib by Yom Harishon Shabboson, as it's written by Yom Harishon Shabboson. You see the Yom Tov is called Shabbos. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabban, and the sages taught in a Braisa, Usfartem lochem, it says that you should count. Shetei svir l'chol echad v'echad, it means that everyone should count. Mimochras HaShabbos, and it says you start counting the day after Shabbos. It means Mimochras Yom Tov, it means the day after Yom Tov. Maybe it means the day after Shabbos, literally. Maybe it means on Sunday. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says, Hareyu Omer Tisperu Chamishim Yom. It says you should count 50 days. And that means Kol Sfiro Shatza Sofer Lo Yuel Chamishim Yom. Any way that you count, it should always be 50 days. V'im Tomer Mimachras Shabbos Bereshis. And if you were to argue and say that it's the day after Shabbos, meaning starting on Sunday, so it's not always going to be 50. Pa'amim Shatza Motzi Chamishim Ve'echot. Sometimes it'll be 51. Upa'amim Shatza Motzi Chamishim Ushnayim, sometimes it'll be 52, and Chamishim Ushlosha, sometimes 53, Chamishim V'Arba, sometimes 54, Chamishim V'Chamisha, sometimes 55, Chamishim V'Shisha, sometimes 56. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir Omer, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir says, Eino tzarech, this proof is not necessary. And Rashi explains, first the Sfira should be, L'chol echod ve'echod, shekol echod chayiv l'sper, means every individual needs to count those days of the Omer. And then kol Sfiro shata sofer la'olam yehu shavos. The proof is, all the counting should be the same. Shelo yehu bechulan elo hachamishim. It has to always be 50 days. Kashem shem chol Pesach b'Shabbos. Just like if Pesach falls out on Shabbos, shelo hakol tamona miyom hamachras. There, everyone agrees. You start counting on Sunday. Shu Yom Tov Sheni Shel Pesach. That's the second day of Yom Tov of Pesach. Chamishim Yom. So then it's for sure going to be 50 days. Af li'olam lo tisbor yomim miyom Sheni Shel Pesach al chamishim. You're always going to be counting 50 days from that second day of Pesach. And so Rashi continues and says, V'im Tomer Shabbos Bereshis. Now, if you're going to count always from Shabbos, literally, meaning from Sunday, so sometimes the counting according to what we did last year, if you would compare the two, because in the previous year, we started from the second day of Yom Tov, but now we're not starting from the second day of Yom Tov. Now it's going to come out to 51. Kagon Chol Pesach, Berev Shabbos. Let's say this year Pesach falls on a Friday. And you're going to be counting from Sunday, so then Nun Beis, then it's really going to be 52 compared to the day before, Kagonim Chol, then it's really going to be 51 again, and then Nun Beis, you can have 52, Kagonim Chol Behei B'Shabbos, let's say Pesach falls out on Thursday, and Nun Gimel can come out to 53 as compared to the previous year, Kagonim Chol B'Revi B'Shabbos if it falls out on Wednesday, and Nun Daled B'Shlishi, it could be 54 if it falls out on Tuesday, Nun Hei B'Sheni, 55 if it's Monday, Nun Vav B'Echad B'Shabbos, and it could be 56 if it's on Sunday, Miyom Rishon ad Yom Atzeres, from Yom Rishon until Yom Atzeres, until Shavuos, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph.